Hello, everyone. Before we delve into our conversation with our guest speaker, Sangeeta Prasad, I would like to start with a reflection. How do you think conscious leadership can transform the way we build and scale businesses today? Well, for me, conscious leadership is all about not just leading the company to financial success. It's about creating a sustainable, ethical, and innovative business practices that benefit just not the company, but society and environment as well. Today, we are fortunate enough to have a leader who embodies exactly these principles. So, welcome, Sangeeta, to this talk show, the Conscious Leadership Series.
I'm happy to be part of this, Smita. Thank you for taking this subject and trying to give it some heft, because the world needs it much more than it thinks it does.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, to all the listeners, I would like to introduce Sangeeta Prasad, a business leader, a strategic advisor, a board member. Sangeeta has held numerous leadership roles, such as the former group CEO at the Runwal, former MD and CEO at the Mahindra Life Spaces, and chief sales manager at the Tata Steel. She has also served on the group executive board at the Mahindra Group and a board member at IIM Lucknow. Sangeeta is known for her expertise in conceptualizing, strategizing, and delivering industrial and urban ecosystem. Her deep understanding of commodities business, coupled with her experience in managing joint ventures and evaluating investment opportunities, has enabled her to scale numerous enterprises successfully. She has demonstrated remarkable capabilities in institution and brand building, people leadership, sharing her insights on platforms like World Economic Forum in Davos and COP21. Sangeeta currently advises many mentors, startups, and leaders, emphasizing on technology and ESG principles to create a more sustainable and robust enterprise. Sangeeta holds a BE in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from Jadavpur University, a PGDBM from IIM Lucknow, and Advanced Business Management and Education from INSEAD and Yale. So please join me in welcoming Sangeeta Prasad, a strategic advisor, growth leader, and a mentor par excellence. So welcome, Sangeeta, once again to this chat show, and it's my honor to host you in this Conscious Leadership series.
Thank you, Smita, for inviting me.
So my first question to you, Sangeeta, can you share your perspective about what conscious leadership means to you and how has it helped you in your journey?
Interesting question. Actually, I've never seen leadership with an adjective. Now that you've put an adjective to it, I think what you've done is you're trying to bring clarity to what leadership is all about. And I think I should thank you for that, because it is setting me to reflect and think what I have done. Now, whether it is conscious, subconscious, or unconscious, it is for you and the listeners to decide. So I believe a leader has to look within first before they look without. Because since I was last week in Sadhguru Academy hosting a course on leadership, I remember Sadhguru's words deeply, that first you have to look at your well-being, your comfort, your happiness, because if you don't do that, you will not be able to spread well-being and happiness around you. I think that's the first tenet of conscious leadership. Do you understand yourself? Are you comfortable with yourself? Do you have confidence in yourself that you can deliver before you go and conquer the world or set everything in pace? And more often than not, I've seen we struggle on that. And I'm not saying I'm super successful, but I'm aware of that. So first step is conscious leadership is awareness. And you know what, Smita, it's not only conscious, it's the subconscious. So we talk about the word called subconscious. I think what subconscious means is, are you conscious within? Are you aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are? Much as we say that we need feedback from others, the best feedback comes from your gut, your heart, and your soul. So that's the first step, I believe, as a conscious leader. As a good leader, one has to practice. And I have practiced, and many a night I felt so vulnerable and inadequate about myself. But it's okay and comfortable to feel like that, because if we think we are too perfect, something is going wrong. And then when I do that, how do I go about knowing what's happening in the world? Because to be an effective leader, you have to know what's happening in the world, not only in terms of the team who works with you, but even from a commercial business, what's happening around you, the environment. So to cut the long story short, for me, conscious leadership is what am I within? And what do I understand once I'm comfortable with myself, what's happening around? And it's an iterative real-time process. It's not an event. And that's what I have tried to practice. Hope this gives you some insight of how I approach leadership, conscious or subconscious.
And absolutely, Sangeeta, you brought in a very important element of understanding ourselves within. Unless and until we understand ourselves, and it's evolving. I as a person, I'm evolving every single day. What I was probably 10 years back and what I am today may not be the same. And what I am today, I may not be the same tomorrow. So it's self-reflection is a continuous activity. And when you understand yourself better, you are able to project your true self with authenticity to the world. Then there is no mincing of words, or people will not get confused with who this person is actually. And as leaders, when we are vulnerable enough and we are showing that authenticity, that's when we are consciously embodying what our strengths are.
True.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing in the aspect of self awareness. Because as we grow up the ladder, somewhere we miss out on that element. Because when you grow up the ladder, it's not about the knowledge and the skill that matters as much as how much you know yourself. And only then you will work towards understanding your teams better.
This, can you give me a minute? Something is
Yes,
just tackle something. Just give me a minute.
yes. So, Sangeeta, you've been into World Economic Forum and you've spoken about climate and all of that. So, while you've emphasized on ESG principles for building sustainable enterprises, how have you been able to integrate these principles into your business strategy?
So as I was talking in continuation of what I spoke about conscious leadership, a conscious leadership, as I understand what I am within, I need to be very aware of what's happening around me. I cannot say I know everything because I cannot gain nirvana by myself. The world around me is changing at a very fast pace. So ESG is a much bandied term, and people give it a lot of, oh, it's a wonderful, glamorous thing to do. It's the basic thing to do. You can see what's happening around the world. It's getting hotter somewhere, it's getting colder somewhere. And it's all because of the ravage we as human beings have done to the nature. So it makes practical sense that ESG becomes a part of how you are. And what is ESG? ESG is about environment, it's about social, and it's about governance. You've seen many an enterprise losing steam and losing reputation and losing existence because they've not followed the governance principles. You've seen many a companies not able to start business in a particular location because they've not taken the social mores into account, what's happening. So, for instance, when we were building Mahindra World City Chennai, we realized that, we cannot be an island. And I remember the first boilerplate which was presented to me was Mahindra World City Chennai is an island of excellence. I immediately scratched it and said, that's not our vision. We are not an island of excellence. We are an inclusive city which has no barriers, which have people around. who are wanting to be part of the inclusion game. So that's social. So it makes business sense because it can take you out of business if you do not take into account. There are many stories. I do not want to name one because it's not fair. Then environment. If as a business, when I'm building buildings and cities, if I am not aware of where will I get water from? How will I have energy? Is solar the right thing to do? So ESG is not something parallel, it's mainstream. And how have we done it? We have put it as a part of our business strategy. So how will we use our waste? So for instance, how do we take the waste, the water from the sewage treatment plant and recycle it and use it for landscaping rather than using fresh water to use for landscaping? Is it not business? Because what you are doing is you are telling your residential homeowners that I'm going to reduce your water cost and I'm also giving you water, the right water for the right thing. So, Smita, it is typical business sense. We should not give it, a particular position that it is something which I'm doing for doing good to the society. Businesses should do it to do good for themselves as well as the society. Otherwise, you will certainly see the carpet being swept off your feet and you will be standing, and maybe you will not be standing either.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's where the future generations' life is looking so bleak because of all that what has happened, with the environment. And I love what you said. ESG is not parallel; it is mainstream. When you think of nature, the Mother Earth, and then you are consciously, your actions are aligned with protecting the nature, that's when we all are doing true business.
Right. And just to add to it, uh, we need not feel very lofty about it. It's
Yeah,
our duty. Sometimes we try to say, oh, I'm doing this for the nature, environment. No, you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for yourself, your people, and your business. And the impact of you in the social and the environmental ecosystem means a lot. Otherwise, one day you will run out of business and you'll be having nothing to look forward to.
absolutely. And I think when we're talking about the business, even individuals, every individual has to now start contributing. It's already late, but as they say, it's never too late. Doing our bit also is so important, right?
Right, right. And so what, so the best way to create accountability is to put it in the KRAs of people. So everything which I have personally done as a leader is how do I, we spoke about mainstreaming. How do I mainstream it in the responsibilities and KRAs of people who work in teams? That, how much water are you getting recycling from the STP and what percentage of water are you using as recycled water and what percentage as fresh water? So how much am I spending on water? How many projects have I taken which are for solar? And what is the business model for that? What is the payback? So what I'm saying is, don't make it sound like something altruistic. It makes business sense. And when you do that and you connect it with your business, then what happens? The whole organization, your investors, your customers, your stakeholders buy into that because you are giving a product and service which is more effective and more efficient than competition if you do it that way.
And I think that also brings in another element of trust that your customers, your other stakeholders, your investors have, that you're not building something and your target is not about some completing something, but your first target is to ensure that what are we doing which is environment friendly? Are we taking care of the nature, the environment first, and then everything else? And that's how it's becoming mainstream.
So the other thing, Smita, since we are discussing this, for my customer, I need to also show the benefit of maybe commercially what it does to them. So when I'm saying I am using how much recycled water am I using in the resident community, you're actually reducing cost of water for the customer. So, in residential, we have a term called CAM, common area maintenance. So and that is what has been the strive, that all these initiatives, are they resulting in commercial and environmental benefit for the customer? Because not everyone in the society is interested in what you are doing as an enterprise for the environment. What is in it for me? As long as I can take an initiative and convert it into a benefit for any stakeholder, then it becomes sustainable, and then there's a pull for that initiative. Otherwise, it becomes burdensome, and sometimes organizations feel, why am I doing it? So I'm going back to my mainstreaming. Is it meaning something for every stakeholder you serve? For an investor, which has certain guiding principles, is it helping them to get their returns better? Is it helping to reduce cost? Is it helping to not have penalties? So there are many things when you do it in the the wholesome way, holistic way, and show positive impact for various stakeholders, it becomes sustainable. Otherwise, it becomes an event and a one-off thing, never to be repeated when things are bad.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for bringing that point of, it's not burdensome, but the way you deal with it can be burdensome. So my next question to you is, as a leader with strong people management capabilities that I have seen in what you've done so far, how have you fostered a culture of continuous learning and growth to tap into the potential of every individual?
So, I always believe culture is a mix of soft and hard. Hard are the policies, processes. The soft are the rituals, symbols, and practices. So, as a leader, if I just so I'll give you a very a very simple example. So, companies have work from home policies. Now, I have a policy, so you can work from home as per policy. But if the culture is that every time Smita wants to work from home, she has to give multiple reasons to her superior, and the superior will give approval for it, what does it do? It deters Smita from asking for work from home. So, as a leader, I believe if there is a policy, it should be used without fear and favor. But if I see a Smita, every time she works from home, her productivity reduces by 50%, then there is a tough conversation. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not about having policies, practices which are evolving, which are liberal. So I believe as a leader, I should be liberal and not lenient. And in doing that, what I'm doing is I am telling my team, I'm willing to be with you. Are you willing to be with me? And then having authentic conversations if it doesn't work. So if every time you go from work from home, and every time your productivity reduces, as a leader, I should be candid enough to tell you, have a conversation. You know what, Smita? I think next time you should take leave, because the last 5 times you took work from home, every time your productivity reduced by so much, maybe you're preoccupied. So why not take a leave? And if someone who works from home is doing well, don't even bother to ask that person where you are. Let that person be. So, it's all about letting people be, letting them discover their potential, but not let them be when they are not able to deliver the goods. Because as a leader, my duty, I'm a custodian to the organization. I'm a trustee of the organization. How do I enable you as a colleague to thrive, to do well, be happy, and contribute? So no two way about it. The balance is very important. And as a leader, you should have the courage to be authentic, and you should have the kindness and generosity to be liberal.
Wow, that's quite insightful, Sangeeta. I heard about liberal and not lenient, and give them the freedom. Only then a true leader will be able to tap into the potential of the person. And when things are not going right, have the courage to be assertive enough and saying what's not working well, And thereby, it's important that they are reflecting as to what they can do better now that now that my leader or my boss or my manager has given me so much of opportunities, and empowered me, and above all trusted me to do what I'm supposed to be doing.
And more often than not, people are aware of what they are doing or not doing. The topic of consciousness is evident in everyone. So when you call people out with evidence, and not by emotion, but by evidence, when you call people out by real-time data and by action orientation, and do it authentically, at that point, that person may feel bad and maybe, feeling frustrated or unhappy. But then when they go back, they reflect on it. We all reflect about ourselves. So then people understand. It's the difference between being genuine and being superficial. So if you are genuine and if that behavior is consistent, people do understand that. And usually 99% of people like you and me will take it in the right spirit. There will be that 1%. Now, we are not responsible and we are not perfect. We cannot take care of the whole world. Sometimes the world takes care of itself.
Absolutely. At one point in time, each one has a point where they understand what's right and what's not. So our job as leaders is to only bring the point at the right time, with the right constructive feedback and communication, so that the message is pretty clear, and the person obviously continues to trust the leader because of the authentic communication he or she has had.
Right. And you know what? I have seen over the years and I've learned from many mentors I've been very fortunate to have very good leaders who have nurtured me. First in my 16 years of Tata Steel, some of the best leaders, and then again in Mahindra. So I was fortunate that I had some of the best mentors in my formative years. The difference between professional ethic and personal liking. Sometimes the line is very fine. How do we? So I may like you as a person, but if you are not doing good for the organization, I shouldn't deter or feel uncomfortable of calling you out. So that's what I believe a conscious leader or an effective leader should be all about. The balance between the trusteeship for the organization and the concern for the colleagues, but never should it disable the goodness which we are trying to achieve, which is the good of the organization goals. Not so nothing should be at the cost of the others, Smita.
Yes.
Organization should not suffer at the cost of the employee. The employee should not suffer at the cost of the organization. If you ask me, that's a leader's job. How do you create that balance so that we thrive? The second is, how do we create an atmosphere of authenticity so that when you give feedback, people take the feedback for the issue and do not take it personally. It's not easy because the fine line between a feedback on an issue and a feedback of a person is sometimes not understood by either party, the feedback giver and the feedback taker. So I'll give you an example. The other day, I was going somewhere and my driver said, we have to turn left. I was very particular, we had to turn right. And my decision was wrong. So I apologized to him. I said, "Arey kya hai na, aaj main bahut thak gayi hu. Tune theek kaha tha, but you were right. So I'm sorry that I told you to turn right. We should have turned left." Then what happens? He also feels, or I could have shouted at him. I said, "I don't care what you said. You better follow my instructions." Do you think he will ever call me out next time when I'm doing wrong? He will not. He will say, go wherever you want to. I don't care.
So from a context, this is a very beautiful example you gave, Sangeeta. So from a context of this to taking it in the workplace, when the behavior of a leader is not appropriate, people just blindly do what the leader tells them to do, right or wrong, and that is where leaders are always having surprises. Oh, I didn't know about this. Oh, this is what happened. You didn't tell me. but there is a backstory behind why this is happening.
Right, right. It is always, so one is, you also need to understand each individual in your team. Some are upfront, some are pushy, some are laid back, some are self-effacing. So are you as a leader? And that's why, and this again I've learned from my mentors, it is always important to know the person. Because if you understand the person and his or her motivation, you will be able to set expectations in the right manner, give feedback, and also get feedback. Sometimes what we do forget to do as leaders, not showcase our vulnerability. So many a time, I remember last week when I was at Satguru, so there was a leadership manifesto which we had to fill up. So as the host, I didn't. So I volunteered to my co-host. And the first question was, in my core, what am I? So in my core, I am dash, dash, dash. So I said, I'm a vulnerable little girl. So my co-host later on told me, why did you use those words, Sangeeta? Because I said, I am a vulnerable little girl. So then someone else came and asked me, ma'am, you are so confident, you are this and that. I said that I'm confident, but I also am vulnerable, because at every vulnerability, I seek what I need to do to cross that vulnerability. But if I'm vulnerable, you as a team member, and if I share with you, and I'm not good at something, you will come and help me, because I think respect doesn't come from showcasing a personality which is not authentic. Respect comes from, and I followed that to the T. When I say, I do not understand this, can you help me? You are better than me. I'm sure if you are my colleague, you will bend yourself backwards to help me. But when I say, no, I understand, you don't understand, and you say, you go and jump, you do whatever you do. So the idea is, are you able to have the confidence? So you have to be damn confident to tell your colleague that I am vulnerable. So I told that person who was a senior person, you know what? How many people in this room will be able to say this, because they are vulnerable and so they are not able to say this? I have no problem, because I know I do not like to do a few things, and there are my colleagues who will do it with me, for me, and I will learn from them, and I will do certain things which are my innate strengths. So that's complementarity, understanding each other becomes very important.
And in this story of yours, what you shared about, you saying that I am a vulnerable little girl. Mm, uh, Again, taking back to the context of actual workplaces, when as a leader I say I don't know, can you help me? Uh, the leader is actually demonstrating that psychological safety, that if my boss can say I don't know, and if I don't know something, I can also wholeheartedly go and say, and nothing will happen. I will only get more support to be able to achieve that goal, rather than being in fear and saying, hey, look, I don't know, but I can't tell, I will just try and do something about it.
Yep. So I'll give you a live example in my earlier tenure at Runwal. So, area which is familiar to you, you lease areas in malls. And the negotiation, apart from being commercial, has a lot of legal implications. So my leasing head would come with proposals. And sometimes when I'm looking at the proposal, so our CFO for the malls, she has been in malls forever. So I always said, I have learned malls in the last 2 years only. You guys know much more than me. So I used to call her and tell her, I'm giving this decision. Can you just go through? Are there any things which I've missed out? So she then would go deeper into it and tell me, Sangeeta, this is one point in malls, usually you don't do it. I know you have taken a commercial decision. I'm respecting your decision. Would you like to consider it once before you give the? So how value added is this? Now, I as a leader, if I say, oh my God, she reports to me, how can I ask her? She will think I'm stupid. She never thought I was stupid, because she thought Sangeeta is seeking from me, because she knows I've worked for 10 years in the malls business, and she knows that I will give her the right input. Will she ever give me wrong input? You tell me. She will always go and study it and give me the right input, because I'm trusting her. So trust is the most coveted asset which we have. When we trust people, as I said, it is not 100, it will be 99. But don't you think it's a great idea? 99 is much greater than 1, is it? Not. So I'm giving you live examples so that you understand it's not about words and homilies. It's what you do. So I actually met her a few days back and she was saying, yes. And Sangeeta, the leasing head who used to get upset with me. So one day I actually called him and I said, it's not her fault. She's not policing you because they are peers. So I understood that he was feeling that I was not trusting him. So I called him and said, it is nothing to do with you. It is to do with me. I have requested her. So if she's asking a question, it is because of me and not because she has something against you. So please understand this and take it in the right spirit. So it is about my not knowing or not feeling that I know it good enough and asking a colleague rather than, because you see, that's what happens sometimes. If she starts asking questions to him, she feels compromised. So the next tweak I did was I said, don't never ask him, ask me. Because if you ask him, he doesn't feel good about it. So you ask me or you tell me, I will never feel anything. I will look at it. And if I do not agree with you, I have the confidence to say, while you are saying this, it's a conscious call I have taken because we want this client in our mall. So I want to give him or her this benefit, but thank you for raising it because it may not be applicable to the others.
Oh, wonderful. That's an apt story. That's an apt, real story that you shared. It's not just about vulnerability.
For both of them, they will tell you this.
I am damn sure about it. It just didn't talk about vulnerability. It spoke about immense trust in your team and the psychological safety of that you created by saying, hey, I need help. And when that happens, that is the biggest reason for a leader's success. And I've seen that firsthand.
As a leader, you also have veto power. While you listen, yes. I am not saying you have to be namby-pamby and you have to be conflicting in your decision making. Because one of the key tenets of a good leader is also decision making with the information they have. So you cannot have perfect information. Sometimes we differ on that. So while I'm talking about vulnerability and seeking help, I'm not talking about weakness. I'm not talking about dithering on decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as leaders, we may have to take some tough calls, some tough decisions. And those things can happen when we really have the right set of information with us. Because leaders need not know everything. I know it all can never happen, and especially in an age and world where technology and knowledge is available in plenty.
Yes.
But decision making and taking the decision with courage is something which that's also a capability of a conscious leader. So thank you for bringing that another element out. So you have been mentoring a lot of startups. You are an advisor to a lot of leaders in startups. How do you guide these emerging leaders in integrating conscious leadership in their business models?
Interesting question. So I will be very candid with you. My experience with young people, I will for a moment talk about people, then I'll go to the enterprise. Oh, wow, I learned so much from them. I am so selfish, let me tell you. I love interacting with youngsters, and I'll give you another example and then I'll go to your startup question. So my executive assistant in Mahindra, I have gone to him in the last few years, even after I've left Mahindra, to take his advice. I always tell him कि तू ना मेरे से ज्यादा लेवल हेडेड है और प्रैक्टिकल है, क्योंकि तू ना राजस्थान और गुजरात से है, तो तेरा दिमाग ये सब में बहुत चलता है. And I've gone and sought his advice on so many things. So does that mean he never seeks my advice? So that complementarity, now I'm bringing that element in leadership, is very crucial. So while I go to him, I know on certain things which he's feeling uncomfortable about, he comes to me. Now I'll take this example. So, what happens there? There is symbiosis. There is trust in each other. And does it happen with everyone? It's magical. It doesn't happen with everyone. So you're fortunate. But I've seen with young people, if you do that with them and they understand that you are wanting to collaborate, seek advice, because in this agile, changing world, people who are young know much more than people who are young are much more aware of the practical. I've seen my daughter being more practical than me. Mummy, you should not do this. If you have taken a consulting program for 8 hours, don't spend 16 hours there. Then I tell her, that's my choice. I am like that. But at least she's calling me out. So even in startups or being an advisor, it is not a one-way traffic. It's a two-way traffic, because the more two-way it is, the more effective I am as an advisor. The more contributing and value adding I am as an advisor. Because what I do is, whether it is a startup or at present I am also working in consulting a fairly established company, which I have told is like a startup, though they have scale, because this company wants to scale up. It is about understanding the innate strengths and capabilities. So, sometimes as leaders, when we have been there, done that, we think we know everything. And अरे मुझे क्या पता, मुझे मालूम है ये कैसे करना है. नहीं, there are certain innate strengths. So I always look at what has been going right. Something must have been going right in this company, no? Even if it is a startup, something, the vision of the leader, the way they are running, the way they found out the business model. I didn't find that business model, that startup did. Now, how do I garnish, embellish that business model with my experience and expertise, which is of reliability, consistency, and sustainability? And when I mean sustainability, it's not only about environment, it is about the holistic business sustainability. I go and ask the right questions. So as a leader, as an advisor, you need to understand the other party's strengths, other party's vulnerabilities, ask the right questions, and never prescribe. Because when you prescribe, you're creating a wall. When you ask reflective questions, you are actually enabling decision-making by the person. You are not deciding for him or her. And I have followed that in most, even with my HODs. So I'll give you an example again. Yesterday, we were in a meeting with one of these companies I'm advising, where the HODs hitherto have not been taking decisions for whatever reason. I don't want to get it whether they are right or the enterprise is right. So what I'm trying to do gradually is to communicate to stakeholders that the HOD is the last person to take the decision. So we had an external stakeholder, and that person needed some approval. So I told, you know what? I will not approve. The HOD who is in charge of this will approve. Then I realized the person who's the HOD was not feeling comfortable. So he said, Sangeeta, but they need so much extra for this approval. I said, you know what? You are a smart guy. You decide, you evaluate, and you approve. If you feel uncomfortable about approving, because it's a cultural shift, I am empowering that person to approve. With empowerment comes accountability. Sometimes we feel uncomfortable. Empowerment is a very nice, namby-pamby word. Accountability is a hard word. So for everywhere I go, I always say, for me, the synonym of empowerment is accountability. So are you willing to take that with you? When I, as a leader, take decisions, I'm accountable. So that's why in certain organizations, when you build culture and empowerment, and the crib is, oh, I am not empowered. The next question I ask is, I will empower you. Will you take the decision and be accountable for it? So that's where the last mile and the last stretch is. So after the meeting, I told the person, even if you were uncomfortable taking the decision, I was trying to give you heft. Don't ever say in front of an outsider, there's an extra charge. So what do I do? You may come back to me later and say there's an extra, but evaluate if that extra charge is justifiable. You should be able to recommend. If not, take the decision. So that's the shift which as an advisor or as a leader ever, I have tried to follow. It's not easy because people feel comfortable when you take the decision for them, but they crib when you say, when you ask them, are you no, I am not empowered. So, you is the synonym of empowerment. It's a very hard word called accountability.
Yes. And with accountability, that's so much of ownership we take, right? That decision that I have taken, I think I will do everything to ensure that that the decision taken, the outcome is going in the right direction. And for some reason it has not happened, at least I will learn from it. I will not make the same mistake, but I'm learning from it.
So I will now share again something which, I'm trying to give you examples so that it is easier for all of
Yes,
us to
yes.
understand. So when I was in Isha, one of the speakers was Pankaj Bansal, who is the CEO and founder CEO. Now he's not the CEO, he has empowered of a organization called People Strong. You must have heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He gave a very good, a weaving of this. I had earlier always, and I still say, empowerment ka synonym is accountability. So since you brought the word ownership, he gave a nice flip to it. So he said to all of us and to the audience that sometimes people say empowerment is ownership, but it is not enough. So he gave an example. So he had a colleague who came and said, "Sir, now that you've empowered me, I'll own it." But with ownership, the last mile is account. You may own it, but if for next 3 times you own it and you fail, there's something going wrong. So you've spoken about calling out. So he gave that similar, example. So he said, after I had empowered, I realized that third time round, he was failing. So then I need to, as a leader, call out and take that empowerment back or find out why he's failing. Because you cannot experiment 3 times at the cost of you can experiment one. So I have used this term for a long time, very early actually. I don't know how I stumbled upon this truth, and I'm talking about, when I say early, I'm talking about 2000. That's 24 years back. Is delegation with discretion. When you empower, it is as much as your duty and right to empower rightly. Like, Sweta, you have learned certain things, you have done, suddenly I tell you, I empower you. Oh, I'm going to create an empowered organization. I'm a very nice, popular leader. And I give Smita more than she can chew. And she fails. So the next thing which I am talking to you about is empowerment with knowledge, discretion, and responsibility. And also having a back. So when you empower, so I'm talking to an organization and I'm telling them, please don't, if you're so uncomfortable that your people are so bad, don't empower and make them accountable for 1 crore. Make them accountable for 5 lakhs. Let that person take a 5 lakh decision. And then you do not micromanage a police. You keep track. Ask the person, like I gave you the example of that person, that if if the approval requires 5 lakh more, can you please study it and let me know whether you think we should give it? You use your mind, your brain, your expertise, because you know things. You have been working for 20 years. So what I'm telling is, empowerment is not a namby-pamby applicable for all word. We sometimes like to be popular and say, I've empowered everyone, but you have not empowered. You have actually set yourself up for failure. So empower wisely, have the back, help. And if you see that empowerment is failing 3-4 times and accountability and ownership is not leading to right accountability, you have the right to take back or understand what's going wrong. Is it the person or the processes or the practices or you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Empowerment with accountability and with knowledge of the strength of the person, so that we are not up for failure, because our failure, indirectly, when the person fails, he or she also starts thinking about their capabilities, right? Oh, I couldn't do it. My boss empowered me, but then I couldn't do it. So we don't want anybody to be letting them to fail. At the end of the day, we all want to see that success. So understanding the strength of individuals and empowering them will step by step lead to success.
Yes.
Well, that's nice. And my next couple of questions, which I have to ask, you spoke about so many great qualities of a conscious leader. But what are some like top three for you non-negotiable qualities, or you feel is very essential to lead consciously?
I wouldn't say qualities, but I would say more of characteristics.
Yeah.
Is I'll go back to my first part of this today's discussion is be self-aware. Be aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. So that's the first. And when I say weaknesses, the vulnerabilities or the things which you are not sure of. The second one is a more difficult one. Are you confident to share it with your team? And say, I'm good in maths and physics, but I'm very bad in drawing. Can you and seek out people who are good in drawing and say, on this, so I give you that example that you know more than me. Can you, when I'm taking decisions, give me inputs which will make my decision richer? You are not delegating decision making. You get my point? You are
Yes.
making ownership is yours, but you are seeking help. So that's the second one. And the third one is be consistent, reliable in setting expectations. Because when you don't do it well, people are confused. And at times as leaders, we are not aware that we are not setting expectations clearly. So these are not qualities, these are practices which need a I wouldn't use the word conscious leader, a good leader, a great leader needs to practice and be conscious that they have to practice. So every day at the end of the day, if I have done 100 things, I also look at, oh my God, those 10 I did horribly wrong. So do a self-review at the end of the day. So it's like, a PDCA, like you do plan, do, check, act. So as a good leader, are you plan, do, check, act? So at the end of the day, you come back to yourself. So you start with yourself, go out, do things with others, take decisions and come back to yourself and say, what did I do wrong today? And if that wrong is very wrong, you can, I've had a few times when on an issue, I would have been hard on a person. So what I do is I go to that person's cabin and say, I was very hard on you, but the issue still is not right. What you did or what you, evaluated was not correct, but I thought I was extra hard on you. What it does is it differentiates between the issue and the person. Because what happens when the person gets miffed personally, the issue becomes a non-issue, and that's dangerous, where the issue is an issue. I
Yes,
hope
and I so much agree with you on this last one. I learned it my way. Or being harsh and then just going and saying, hey, I'm sorry. At that moment, there was something else going on in my mind, and I think I was a bit harsh with you. Uh, how much it takes to say that
no,
to
adding a flavor to it, but also if the issue is really an issue, please, when you go and say sorry, you're not saying sorry about the issue. Make that clear.
Yes. It's yeah, I was harsh
Tough
with you. The
the
issue is not yet resolved. Yeah.
the issue, you did not follow these things, but maybe because you did not follow, I was more than harsh.
Yes.
But for that, please, you understand that it was a tough situation, so I must have I'd gone overboard. Two is still an issue, and you need to
yes
they apologize, be very clear for what you're apologizing.
Absolutely. And maybe they might then come up and say, hey, you know what, yes, you are right, this is where I need help, I need to rectify this, how can you help? Or maybe the leader saying that, okay, fine, things have gone wrong, what is that we need to do now to correct it? What is the support that you need from me or anybody that I can provide you with?
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And one last question to you. You already spoke about the program that you were part of very recently, Human Not a Resource. And I have been seeing this from far off, not had the opportunity to attend, but I'm sure one day I will. Um, how can leaders shift their mindset to view their team members and individuals, whoever they are, to tap into their unique talent and potential rather than just thinking about them as resources? What are some tips that you would give to all the current and future leaders?
I touched upon it briefly. The people who work with you and work with you intensely, maybe the people who report to you, uh, one is setting expectations clearly. Second is know the person. I will again repeat. I spoke about it earlier. Know the person in their entirety. So again, the company I'm advising. So last evening, I love music and I have many other, what should I say, likes. So I listen to Tagore songs. So whenever I am unhappy or I'm feeling a little lost, I just put his songs on. So yesterday I was talking to the colleagues and I asked that who all can sing here? It was not about Tagore. Generally, I was asking. So one person actually answered, we have never discovered that. So that was deep, okay? So I said, next week we will discover that. Who is talented? Because I love listening to songs and I want to keep a rose in front of me and I want to see the best talent sing. So I brought humor into it because I realized that these guys have been working with each other for so many years. And the answer was very abrupt, It was not rude, it was abrupt. He said it very nicely, but it was not a nice thing, So I said, next week, मैं सबका टेस्ट लूंगी कौन सबसे अच्छा गाता है फिर वो मेरे सामने गाएगा. So what I'm trying to say is, I know I gave a example which sounds a little frivolous, but it is not frivolous. Do you know your people well? If you don't know your people well, if you don't know what their strengths and vulnerabilities are, and you are sitting on a pedestal and instructing. So I'll give you an example of one of my past companies, and I don't name it. So the person I was working with said, Sangeeta, why do people go to you? So I said, you tell and I guide. First, I told him, I give dahi vada to them. Do you give dahi vada to them? I always tell serious things with all this silly humor. It is dahi vada. He doesn't have that sense of humor. dahi vada देने से होता है क्या? बड़ा का मतलब है, you tell, I guide. So that's why I spend a lot of time with people. So you just call that person and say, अच्छा मेरे लिए वो कर देना. तो वो बेचारा जाके करेगा. वो थोड़ी आप उसको समझ रहे हो कि वो करने लायक है या नालायक है. So I hope I've given you some insight.
Beautiful. Don't tell, but just guide, ask the right questions. I read somewhere in one of the, in one of the coaching books, your advice.
I'll just interrupt.
Yes.
During this conversation, I'm trying to make this also clear. When you do that, don't be namby-pamby. At times, you have to tell also. When you are guiding and the person can't do it. So what I'm trying to say is, don't give up very fast. You as a leader have to invest in that particular equation. And then if you see that investment either through capability or willingness is not working out, you need corrective and preventive action. Now, I know I'm talking like a operations guy, but you can't do it forever. Be liberal, not lenient. So those are the common tenets I would constantly repeat so that people, because there is a line between being soft and being good and being namby-pamby.
Absolutely. And on that note, I just love one quote which constantly reminds me, your advice is not as good as you think.
Yes.
So give an opportunity to somebody else to tap into their potential. What is their perspective? You never know, when you're taking the perspective of your team members, there is some light bulb moment that you will be able to take better decisions than what you thought you would take.
Exactly. That's the example I was giving you about the mall thing. So many times, I will actually send her the link. So many times she's coming to me, And she's very sweet. She's very sweet talking, but firm. I told her I must learn this sweet talking from you. Ita, you know what you have done this. Oh shit. Let me look at the decision. And she will do it so sweetly and firmly.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta, for your time. I just love this conversation. Beautiful insights, being vulnerable, trusting, empowering with accountability. There is a thin line between tell and, of course, ask. Give them the opportunity, and you will find a lot of things happen when you sort of ask, then you tell. So thank you so much for your time. And I love this conversation, and I'm sure the audience are going to love this and get some great insights for them to become a better and conscious leader. And on that note, Sangeeta, thank you very much for gracing this occasion. Thank you.